Is atheism contradictory? Eric Lyons seems to think so, but Eric also has an imaginary friend, if that tells you anything. He wants to prove that atheism is either wrong or it's morally reprehensible, whichever one is easiest to get to. This, of course, coming from the side that follows the moral monster in the Bible and has no problem with its clergy raping small children. So, yeah, I'm going to leave that one up to you to decide. This time out, we visit with Eric Lyons and his silly World Video Bible School channel as he takes yet another incompetent potshot at atheism because, honestly, it's all the religious can do. Instead, he just proves once again that he hasn't got a clue what the hell he's talking about. That's hardly a surprise after all. So, is atheism contradictory? Only if you've got no idea what atheism is or how logic and reason actually operate. Because, this is religion. Let's go take a look.
Why do people generally think that some actions are right and some actions are wrong, regardless of their subjective opinions?
If you want the honest truth, here you go. In virtually all cases, it comes from society, not from a god. Social views mean a whole lot more to people than religion does, which is why religions are so fractured in the real world, most often along social lines. It's why Muslims in the Western world follow Western social traditions, while Muslims in the Middle East follow Eastern social traditions. They take their social standards and their social cues, and then they staple their religion onto them to justify them. That's how this demonstrably works, yet the religious don't really want to hear that, do they? And I'm predicting, Eric, that you won't be the exception to the rule.
Why do most people generally believe that it's unfair for a known cheater to win a race at the Olympics?
Because the Olympics, and indeed all competitive sports, are based on the skill of the athletes, not their dishonesty. If the competition isn't fair, then what's the point of the competition in the first place? What does it prove? These are pretty basic questions, aren't they?
Why do most people believe it's evil or wicked for an adult to torture an innocent child simply for the fun of it?
And the religious love to pull that one out, but I honestly can't say that I've ever seen or even heard of anyone torturing a child, as the religious say, for the fun of it. Because really, who does that? Other than the religious. Now, I don't know if it's fun, but the religious are well known for torturing children, especially when it comes to medical issues. How many dead kids do we have to see where their parents force them to suffer by not getting them the legitimate medical care that they need until they die as a testament to their parents' own ignorance? There are graveyards full of dead kids, all caused by religion. I don't know how fun it was, but if that's not torture, I don't know what is.
Or for a man to force himself sexually upon a woman.
Do I really have to pull up case after case after case after case of men who think women owe them sex because God supposedly made them subservient? Religious rape cases are off the charts, but it isn't just cases of men forcing themselves on women because God. But the clergy has a serious case of religious influence peddling when they push themselves on men, women, and especially children under the guise of, do it or God will get mad. How many billions of dollars is the Catholic Church up to in restitution so far? Even the former pastor of a church in Eric's own small Alabama town has pled guilty to 13 state sex charges this year alone. I mean, he lives in a town of 8,000 people, and he's got a local sex abuser pastor. It's kind of hard to get away from it if you think about it.
Why do people generally think that such actions are outright wrong?
Because their societies don't permit it. And if you look at the societies, it isn't just Christians who think it, it's Muslims and Hindus and atheists and everyone in between. Because this isn't a religious position. It's a human one. It goes right back to the basis of morality, which has nothing at all to do with any God. It is based on enlightened self-interest and empathy. We don't want to be treated badly. We don't want our families to be treated badly. Therefore, we don't treat anyone else badly in hopes that everyone else will reciprocate. It's not that hard to understand, but Eric is going to get it all completely wrong.
Because most people, even many atheists, know that real, objective good and evil exist.
No, you're wrong. This is just an empty claim made for emotional, not intellectual reasons. Yet this is the basis for all religion, isn't it? They really like the idea. They really want it to be true. Therefore, they just make the statement without any ability to back it up rationally, to provide evidence that it has any validity, and they pretend that because in their own minds, feels overrule reals, well, that's just got to be the case. And they're just wrong.
Although objective morality may be outside the realm of the scientific method, every rational person can know that some things are innately good while other things are innately evil.
And that's only the case if you can show that all people everywhere know that the same things are innately good and the same things are innately evil. And yeah, good luck proving that. Because the second we put any of your absurd claims to the test, they just collapse under the weight of their own stupidity. It's really sad that you can't figure that out, Eric.
Atheist Michael Ruse admitted in his book Darwinism Defended that the man who says that it is morally acceptable to rape little children is just as mistaken as the man who says that 2 + 2 = 5.
I would agree that under my society, it is morally unacceptable to rape little children or anyone else, which is why I'm so confused why the religious can't straight up decry sexual crimes against children and everyone else in their own churches. How many times have we seen congregations defending the pedophile priests as they're being dragged off to jail in handcuffs? Rules for thee, but not for me. It's why the only time we see these people getting excommunicated is when it becomes big news in the media. Then they care, when it makes them look bad, and not until.
Philosophers Francis Beckwith and Gregory Kukul said it well. Those who deny obvious moral rules, who say that murder and rape are morally benign, that cruelty is not a vice, and that cowardice is a virtue, do not merely have a different moral point of view, they have something wrong with them.
Greg Kukul is not a philosopher. He has a degree in the philosophy of religion, but that doesn't make him a credible philosopher. He's a Christian apologist, and I think we all know, a pretty terrible one at that. So, fuck off, Eric.
Most rational people do not merely feel like rape and child abuse may be wrong. They are wrong, innately wrong.
You notice he's just repeating the same thing over and over and over without providing any evidence, right? That's how religion works. Mindless nonsense, repeated ad nauseum, until people start to accept it uncritically. It's brainwashing when you think about it. All repetition, zero evidence. It's why we don't take any of this crap seriously. I'm not quite sure why Eric does.
Just as 2 + 2 can really be known to be 4, every rational human can know that some things are objectively good while other things are objectively evil.
And that's still false. He's pretending that he's made his case about objective good and evil, which he clearly hasn't, and now he's going to try to tack his God onto the equation. This is logically and rationally nonsensical, but this is religion after all, so what do you expect? This is why I stop these videos so often and take a look at exactly what they're trying to say critically. We need to make sure that the apologists are being held accountable, and we find almost universally that they're doing pretty much everything wrong. It's unsupported claims based on irrational beliefs for emotional reasons and pretty much nothing more. It's why this is all so laughable.
However, reason demands that objective good and evil can only exist if there is some real objective point of reference.
And that's really where he gets it all wrong. Now, yes, I can legitimately criticize child abuse as morally wrong because that's the case in the society in which I live. Now, if I go to another society where child abuse is fine, where child marriage is fine, which tends to be a problem with Islam, or where they think putting a rifle in a small child's hands and having it go off to die in a war is fine, which you find is true a lot in African Christian societies, then that's a different matter entirely. Perspective matters. And of course, all societies think that they're the only ones that matter. They're right and everyone else is wrong, which is exactly what Eric is doing here. But that's not really the case when you're able to step back and examine things objectively. You may not like what other societies do, and that's perfectly fine. You can't pretend that they simply don't exist, though.
If something such as child abuse can be legitimately criticized as morally wrong, then there must be an objective standard, some higher law which transcends space and time.
Nope, no such thing. And this is right about the time that I have to bring up the rationalization aspect of religion. In truth, Eric is working backwards. He's starting with the belief that there is a God because it makes him feel good to think that there is, and then he's working backwards, trying to justify his pre-existing belief in a God by cherry-picking data points and pretending that they prove anything. See, this proves I was right all along. Except it doesn't prove anything of the sort. I can do the exact same thing with the flying spaghetti monster or invisible, intangible, universe-creating pixies. It doesn't prove anything, except that Eric here is a complete idiot.
Recognition by atheists of anything being morally wrong begs the question, how can an atheist logically call something atrocious, deplorable, evil, or wicked?
Quite simple. But what we're not doing is saying that these things are automatically universally wrong or that they're automatically universally right. That's why it's so important to understand what these words actually mean. So we're going back to the dictionary on this one. Objective means not influenced by personal feelings or opinions in considering and representing facts. How you feel about something is not objective. What you can prove about something using facts and independent data is. And Eric has none of those whatsoever.
According to atheism, man is nothing but matter in motion. Humankind allegedly evolved from rocks and slime over billions of years. But whoever speaks of wrong rocks, moral minerals, or corrupt chemicals? People don't talk about morally depraved donkeys, evil elephants, or immoral monkeys. Dogs are not depraved for stealing the bone of another dog. Pigs are not punished for being immoral when they eat their young. Male animals are not tried for rape if they appear to force themselves upon female animals.
And we're no different. That's really the part that Eric will never admit to. We're simply intelligent enough to arbitrarily assign made-up penalties for actions which violate our social order. And Eric takes that to mean something that it clearly doesn't mean because he's still playing with this silly idea that, well, there's got to be a God. All without evidence, because Eric is a dumbass. All of the examples of this in the world don't change his perception. because his perception is not based on rationality, intelligence, evidence, or anything else that requires that you use your brain. We call that a delusion for a reason.
The fact that humans even contemplate morality testifies to the huge chasm between man and animals.
How do you know that? How do you know that animals don't have their own form of morality? Because it's certainly clear in a lot of species that they do. Chimpanzees don't put up with a lot of crap. If a member of the troop violates the social order, and they do have their own social order, it just takes observation, then it gets dragged away. It gets driven out of the group. But what Eric is talking about here is his morals. If it isn't his morals, then it automatically doesn't exist. Except that's stupid. This goes for everything. If it isn't his God, it doesn't matter. He's not willing to consider anything except his God and his morals and his feelings. This tells me that Eric is a very, very, very shallow thinker. And I trust no one is at all surprised by that.
Simply put, the moral argument states, if objective moral values exist, then God exists.
Says who? Because that's just a bald assertion presented without evidence. Even if everything else that Eric has said is true, and it absolutely isn't, but we can play make-believe, I guess, even if there is some kind of objective morality, why does it have to come from a God? Why does it have to come from his God? Because he wants it to. That's why. This whole thing is really childish. It's an inherently failed premise, and the whole of the argument can be tossed in the refuse pile because it doesn't make any sense. But Eric, he isn't bright enough to figure that out.
Objective moral values such as good and evil, justice and injustice do exist.
Which you haven't proven. You've just asserted it. So that's failure number 2.
Therefore, God exists.
Therefore, you're an idiot. This isn't that difficult. It really isn't. But Eric has a goal in mind that he has to reach, and nothing is going to get in his way. And this is why religion is such a joke. It isn't operating rationally. It's an emotional ploy to reach a comforting conclusion, whether that conclusion is factually valid or not. Eric is doing absolutely everything conceivably wrong here. All apologists do. He's just one of the poster children for religious mental instability.
The moral argument for God's existence exposes atheism as either self-contradictory or outright appalling.
Or it exposes you as a complete moron, because that's really where this whole thing goes. Every single thing that Eric has said in this video, and let's be honest, in all of his videos, is absurd on its face. If you wanted an example of how to do intelligence wrong, he's it. I'm not saying that to be cruel, I'm saying that because it's true. This is not how you do IQ.
You see, the atheist must either reject the accuracy of the moral argument's first premise and illogically accept the indefensible idea that objective morality somehow arose from rocks and reptiles.
Which isn't accurate, because we've already shown that there's no such thing as objective morality. Just because you want it to exist, that doesn't mean that it does. Your wants don't make reality. You can't reach Eric's conclusions unless you start with Eric's preconceptions, and he has no evidence of any kind to support those preconceptions, so rational people must reject them out of hand. Put up or shut up, Eric. It's too bad he doesn't know how to do either.
Or he must reject the argument's second premise, that objective moral values exist.
Which I do. In fact, I reject every part of the moral argument because none of it at all, is rationally defensible. And I find it funny that rape, murder, and child abuse all show up in the Bible and are all spoken of highly by your imaginary God. I don't see anyone complaining that Lot offered up his virgin daughters to be raped in Genesis 34, do you? That's 2 out of your 3 right there. But that's fine because it's in your stupid book. This whole thing is really silly and absurdly hypocritical when you think about it. But that's religion for you, right?
And accept the utterly repulsive idea that such things as rape, murder, and child abuse can never once be condemned as objectively wrong and evil. What's more, if atheism is true, individuals could never logically be punished for such immoral actions since they could not be proven to be inherently immoral.
Which is irrelevant. We don't punish people for doing things that are inherently immoral. Nowhere in the law does it talk about morality at all. People are punished for doing things that are illegal, not immoral. I guess it's no surprise that Eric doesn't have a freaking clue how reality actually functions. Are we supposed to think that driving over the speed limit is now objectively immoral? How could that be when there are no objective speed limits? This is clearly something that Eric has never thought about at all. In fact, I'm not sure that Eric has ever had an intelligent thought pass through that thing that he's got on the top of his neck. Because this is just painfully obvious to anyone with two brain cells to rub together. Too bad that doesn't include Eric.
If there is no God, then there is no objective basis to say that some things are right and other things are wrong.
The only thing around here that's wrong is you, Eric. I haven't seen such concentrated wrongness all in the same place in a very, very long time. This is really why the religious are such a complete joke. They're so far out in left field, they can't even see the baseball diamond anymore. There is something severely wrong with these people. I don't know how else to say it. Eric's brain is broke. Someone make it go.
Reason demands that objective good and evil can only exist if there is some real objective reference point outside of nature.
But that doesn't make it a god. It doesn't make it your god. That's kind of the point. But he's in such a hurry to get back to his emotionally comforting conclusion that he can't address that there are a whole lot more steps in there that he has to complete before his God, in fact, any God, becomes a reasonable explanation for his argument. Never mind the fact that the whole thing is nonsensical to begin with, as I've already shown. This isn't about finding the truth, it's about achieving comfort. And comfort is not a rational goal in this context.
The only reasonable answer to an objective moral law for humans is a supreme, supernatural, moral lawgiver.
Eric is one of those apologists that I really hate. Not because he isn't, like Frank Turek, the gift that just keeps on giving, but because he's so obnoxiously stupid. At least for some apologists, you have to at least think before we respond to the crazy things they say. Not much, because none of this stuff is all that hard to figure out, but at least you have to put in some effort. Eric, though, he's just blatantly wrong in absolutely everything he says, and half the time, my eyes are rolling back in my head at just how stupid the things that come out of his mouth actually are. If I had to pick someone as an example of extremely low-hanging fruit, it would be Eric. But he's also got a following, and apparently there are a lot of people out there, 227,000 at last count, that really need help seeing through his bullshit. So I'm probably going to keep looking in every once in a while because these people need help. It's just painful every time I do it. But, what do you think? Do you think that Eric is among the worst of the Christian apologists out there? Let me know in the comments. As dumb as he is, absurdly simplistic and emotional as his claims are, this is still probably the norm for Christian apologetics. It's made for people who don't think that hard and who really don't give a damn about reality. And that's probably one of the saddest things I've had to say of late. What is wrong with these people? Please, someone explain.
Bum.